Okay, hear me out. What if the little things were the big things? Let me say it again. What if the little things were the big things? What do I mean? Well, it's the new year now, and we're all going to be focused on our goals for the year and for things we want to change. And oftentimes, we'll make these big goals and set these big, hairy, audacious benchmarks for ourselves to try to force our brains to accomplish more, to get ourselves, you know, uh, amped up, motivated, inspired to go out and chase more. And so we go after these big goals, and sometimes we get them, and sometimes we don't. But I'm thinking maybe the big goal is actually not the big, most important thing. I'm thinking the small daily actions, the small inputs are more important than whatever big output you're looking to get. So when I think about sales goals, for instance, so many years have I set targets that I haven't hit because I'm so focused on getting the outcome. Oh, well, how do we make $5 million this year? How do we make $3 million this year? That what it ends up doing is it ends up by focusing too much on the outcome, it ends up shaping my inputs in a way that is either too short term in terms of short term thinking. So I'm just trying to create the result without thinking about the downstream effects, or it just pushes the ideas for the business in a direction that aren't aligned with what I actually want to be doing for the company. I've seen that happen a few times in my life. And now what I'm doing is I'm just focusing on input. So like working out is a good example. I had this idea, this fantasy, that maybe one day I will deadlift 600 pounds. The most I've gotten so far is, I think it's like 505, right over 5. And I just haven't really tried much harder than that. And to get to that next level, I would really need to train and make sure I'm eating and, doing the standard for strength training. But I've just found in the past that if I set this goal, if I want to hit this specific weightlifting goal, it just doesn't give me the proper framework for dealing with the reality of life. Because when we plan out goals like this, a lot of times, especially like weightlifting is a great example, it's very linear. It's like, well, I'll lift this weight this week, this weight, the next week this is my rest period. Like when you're programming it, it's very linear. But then when you go into real life, a lot of times life is not linear like that. It doesn't just happen A, B, C, predictable 1, 2, 3. And so really the only thing you have control over then is if you show up at the gym. You don't have control over, sometimes you tweak something, get a little bit injured. Sometimes you don't have as much time to do the full workout. Sometimes you haven't eaten, so the training isn't as good. But what you can control is showing up at the gym. You can control number of workouts per week, basically, the number of inputs and then the output in terms of what your output is at the end of the year. If you wanted to deadlift 600 pounds, the output would be mostly a result of the input. It would be a result of showing up, even if it's not perfect, but the showing up being the main thing that's being tracked. And so tracking the inputs. So it might be better to say, I want to work out 200 times this year. I want to hit 200 workouts this year and leave out the final lifting goal in order to make sure that you're actually going to hit the goal, because the goal is made up of tiny steps, one by one steps. It's made up of inputs that create the output. It's like there's a John Wooden who's had the great coach who's like, worry about the plays and the scoreboard will take care of itself. So I think that's the way to set goals now, not just for this new year, but just in general. Don't worry about the goal, worry about the input. Same thing with money too, in sales, in a business. You can't control, yes, you can get better at closing, but you can't control other people's minds and their wallets, really. I mean, marketers always like, write better copy, be better at psychology. Like, yeah, that's part of it. But ultimately, people are people. Even the best closers in the world aren't going to close everyone. They're still going to get no's most of the time. The best batting averages are like 300, that means you're hitting 3 out of 10. And so maybe then, again, you look at rather than how much are you closing or what are your sales numbers? You look more at, well, how many attempts are you making? How many pitches are you making? How many sales calls do you have? How many, what do your books look like? I think if I can see how many activities you're doing, how many inputs you're making, then I can be certain that the outputs over time are going to be heading in the direction of the goal. And because goals are always a moving target, but the actions themselves are what determine whether the goal is accomplished. What if the small things were the big things? That's it. See you tomorrow.